welcome back to Crazy Effing Mommy, episode 134. How you doing? Welcome to New York, people. Oh my God, I'm having such a day. I don't even know how it's possible to have such a day at 10 a.m. You know? Like, I got all these people mad at me. Not even my kids. What happened? God. My mother is so mad at me. Or at least she's giving me, I'm very mad at you vibes on text. We'll hold off on fact of the day for a second. I'll tell you the deal. So, I have the book coming out in about a month. Huge accomplishment. I'm very excited. It'll be out. You could buy it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Great. Fine. So the book's at the publisher. And I just am in the process of working with them editing the jacket, right? Like it's last minute edits. The jacket's been done. So I sent my mom on the group text, my mother and my sisters, I sent her the back of the jacket. Well, I sent it to everybody, but really at my mom. And I was like, Mom, look at this, like how fab. And and the back of the book jacket, and by the way, the book's a hardcover book, so there's no soft copies. Maybe I will eventually, but for now, hardcover, fine. So the back of the jacket's great. It has a cute little picture, and then it has some really nice quotes from some people that read the book and were nice enough to give me their quote and name for the book. Fabulous. So I send this, and I'm thinking she's going to be like, oh, my God, that's amazing. I should have known better. She writes, wow, am I in it? So, I was kind of shocked by this text, although my shrink is like, why does some of this behavior surprise you? By the way, why is my doorbell ringing? Oh, God, I know why. It's because I ordered Costco chicken. Anyway, okay. I can't really stop. I can't get enough of that rotisserie chicken. And can you believe they deliver it? That's a perk to living in Manhattan. Anyway, back to the story. So she writes, wow, am I in it? So I said, yeah, Ma, you're in it, but it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. Everything's good. And she writes back, well, I need to see it. I need a snippet. I need you to send me an excerpt. And I'm just like, no. I said, no, I'm not doing that. I said, the book's at the publisher. It's going to be out in a few weeks. And she says again, well, I need to see an excerpt of it. I need to see what's being said about me. I said, Ma, I'm not sending snippets of the book around, okay? And then I said to her, by the by, this is like a huge accomplishment. Like, this has nothing to do with you. And she says, I need to see what's being said about me. And by asking that, it shouldn't be taking away anything from you. And you know what? I didn't even justify that with an answer, because it's like, what? Like, first of all, this is an Italian mother in a 2-second span. Okay, if you want to know what Italian mother is like, that's what it's like. Okay, first of all, my mother, my parents were divorced. They had a nasty divorce, and my father left. And, you'll read about this in the book, and it was traumatic. We had lots of other things happen in the family, like all families. But my mother is just so deathly scared of, talking about family business, about me potentially portraying her in a bad light. The truth of the matter is my mother is whoever she is, okay? And I have figured out a way, my sisters and I, to deal with our adult parents' personality quirks, shall we call them. And, as you get older, you realize your parents are just people. Nobody's perfect, When I went through my own divorce, I saw how difficult that is to navigate. I mean, does my mother drive me crazy? Of course she does. Every time something happens in my life, she has to tell me about how, like, it happens in her life worse. That's how she is. I don't know, homeschooling the kids. Yeah. Oh, well, at least you have an ex-husband that helps you. It's all that. I can't. Anyway, the book is a book of rules that I learned from my family and how I applied them in the corporate world and in a little bit in comedy, right? I talk a little bit about comedy, but it's really more about the business world. And but the first half of the book starts, as sort of my life, right? Like my family life and growing up. So, is she in it? Yes. Is it horrible? No. But like my mother, if I wrote a chapter and I described her and said, oh, my mother came down the stairs in a, seafoam green glitter gown, she would write me and be like, excuse me, it wasn't glitter, it was paillettes. Like, I mean, and she would be annoyed. Like, so it's a lose-lose situation sending her a snippet. You're not getting a snippet, Ma, get over it. Ugh. And you want to know what, by the way, that's another thing. If my kid wrote a book, okay, just saying, we all said this, right? We all say this when we're like, oh, I would never do that. But I really wouldn't. I would be so happy. My daughter draws like a triangle, and I'm like, oh my God, that triangle is amazing. Is it a pyramid? What is that? Like, I'm so interested. My mother just wants to know how she's affected. Once she gets her clear, then she moves on to something else. That's how she is. I can't. Anyway, fact of the day. Nutmeg. Yes, nutmeg in your baking cabinet, your spice cabinet. Did you know if taken in large quantities has a chemical compound that creates a hallucinogenic effect? It has the same effect as MDMA or ecstasy if you take it in large quantities. Could you die? I never heard about this before. And I actually read, which is scary, that in some, I should say, in the 18th century, people did use it as a drug, right? Like, and that's insane. But also, I read that a while ago, I don't know, somewhere, mid-century or something, in the 1900s, in impoverished communities, they found people using nutmeg as a way to induce abortion. Basically, apparently, if you take a malted beverage, salt, nutmeg in a lot of, in a large quantity, and aspirin, and you mix it all together and you drink it, it will trigger, the nerve endings that will trigger the passing of a fetus. Is that not wild? I mean, that's sad. It's sad and it's crazy. But they said if you have like a nutmeg poisoning, you sort of start, or this fact, you start to feel dizzy and confused and drowsy, and you'll have heart palpitate. And I'm just like, what, like, how bad is your life that you need to get high on nutmeg? I don't know. It's not just wild. Some of the things you hear are wild. On the drug note, I have an anxiety disorder. Should that surprise you? I mean, what you just heard, please. And I was taking, for the last, I would say 10 years, on and off, maybe not 10, maybe like 8 years, I was taking on and off Klonopin and Xanax, which I know, Klonopin, you say the word Klonopin and people are like, oh my God, she's a drug addict. And no, it's not. See, the difference is, if you don't know, is Xanax is a pill. Both are prescribed by my shrink, but Xanax is a pill. And if you're having an anxiety attack, you're having something happen, you take it, and within 5-10 minutes, the anxiety goes away. Quells. Klonopin is heavier, but it's more a sustained 24/7 type of prescription, right? It's like the equivalent of keeping your blood pressure down. So if you have an anxiety disorder and you're just always anxious, you're just constantly in this state of angst, and you can't, or you have this all the time, and you can't be taking, 3 Xanax a day, the doctor will prescribe you Klonopin. So that's what I had. And I have a low dosage. Well, no more, but I did have a low dosage of these prescriptions. I'm very sensitive to medication, right? And I could never, I don't know what the milligrams are, but like I could never take like a 15, 20 milligram, like nothing like that. It was all like very, very low. Anyway, I stopped taking it because I don't want to have to be dependent on a prescription medication for something like anxiety. I fully believe in medication. I think there's nothing wrong with it. I know, I don't know, 3/4 of my friends are on some sort of antidepressant or something. That's just that's just the way of the world. But I didn't want to be on the anxiety medication because I just felt like I could do this myself. I could do it myself. And the reason why I started it was because I went through a very difficult period of my life where my father died, and I was working 1,000 hours a day at work, and I was laid off, and my mother just disappeared. I mean, I had that babe, a newborn. I was the primary a breadwinner in my family. I think I was making like 5 times what my husband made at the time. You know, it was like we were having marriage problems. It was so and by the by, the majority of the bills fell on my shoulders. Not easy. It was so hard, right? And I turned to the prescription with my doctor. So I told him I'm going to stop taking it. And we went through this back and forth. Elyse, why you should take it. I said, no, I'm going to do it myself. So I stopped. Let me tell you something. I went through the most insane withdrawal like last month. I was so scared. I mean, it was the craziest, most frightening thing that has happened to me. And let me tell you something. Like I said, I wasn't using any of these medications recreationally. I stopped the Klonopin, and I literally was sweating and freaking out and having more anxiety than I can ever imagine. And when I did that, my thought was, oh, I'm going to take a Xanax to get me over this. And then, I was like, I'm not, Xanax is done, and I had my doctor purposely not, refill it, call the prescription to pharmacy. It's so wild that these medications, when stopped, can make you feel even more angst. So the one thing that you're trying to get away from comes back. It's like it has some insane rebound effect. There's a documentary on Netflix about Xanax. I haven't watched it. I think I haven't watched it because I think it scares me a little bit. But basically, the gist is what I'm trying to tell you is I became dependent on this medication for the last, few years. It just became part of what I take in the morning. Like I'll have a coffee, I have my vitamins, and I would, take the Klonopin. And I didn't realize that my body probably was just addicted to it, just got so used to it. So when my body stopped taking it, I was a lunatic. I was completely anxious. I didn't want to leave the house. I was freaking out. Anyway, so I've been reading, I've been doing meditation, which is hilarious. Here I am sitting in a leopard turtleneck, in my studio, right? Talking to you in my living room that has wall-to-wall leopard carpeting, and I'm talking to you how I'm meditating. I mean, it's a joke. It's like, but you want to know what? It actually works. It works. I've tried it in the past. I did other things in the past. I went to ashrams and all this kind of crazy nut stuff. But yeah, I've got the crystals. I have like the singing bowl. It's like you twirl it around with a wooden stick, and it's like ping. I listen to a lot of meditation stuff on Spotify. I like Thich Nhat Hanh, who recently passed away, but he was a Buddhist monk that talked a lot about mindfulness and all this stuff. I like all this stuff, right? Because I just do. It's you know what? It's better than reading the effing news. That every time I turn on the news, it's shock and horror. Okay, it's shock and horror. Anyway, but one thing that about meditation that really does help when I was having these anxiety attacks, right? Like when I stopped the prescription, is if I close my eyes for like 5 seconds and I just actively listen to the noise I hear in my surroundings. Maybe it's a car honking, maybe it's people talking, whatever it is. Close my eyes, 5 seconds. I listen to the noise and nothing else. And that moment, my mind is totally free of any other thought that's in it, just for that split second. And so I do that a few times a day. And the more I do it, the longer your tolerance builds up to be able to flush out any thought, right? And just focus on that specific sound. And then sort of like a level up is once you're able to sort of meditate, right? Because that's what this is, meditate. Once you're able to do it for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the thoughts will come into your head. You will have thoughts, but just acknowledging the thoughts, okay, that's a scary thought. That's an excited thought, acknowledging it and then sort of letting it float out, right? That's the second level. And some I think it's Jay Shetty who wrote a really good book called Think Like a Monk. It came out a few years ago. I bought it. It's fabulous. He's a British guy, an Indian guy, British guy who worked in finance, and in London. And he turned around and told his parents he was going to go become a monk in India. And his parents were like, are you fucking kidding me? And he was like, yeah, I'm dead serious. Like, I'd rather spend a few years learning how to breathe and how to meditate and sort of like be one with myself as opposed to slaving in an office, entry level, whatever. The parents were like, okay, fine. And he did it, and then he wrote a book, and now he's a speaker, and da-da-da. And he's such an interesting guy. It's worth a read. Think Like a Monk by Shetty. Anyway, he says one of the things he learned at the ashrams was be like the sky, not like the weather. Like, I know, that sounds kind of crazy, but the weather is the emotions. The weather are the feelings that come throughout your body. And the sky, is just always there. Your body is always there. So the weather comes through. Anyway, I like that. Okay, moving on. Well, actually, let me just say this. Note to self. I'm never taking Klonopin or Xanax again because it was the scariest fucking thing. That's all I have to say. So if you have a friend or a child or whoever you know that is taking these medications or just Xanax, because I actually think Xanax might be worse, because you're taking it like you're just popping it, you're just popping it like on an as-needed basis. But I wasn't one of these people that would take it in the morning and the night. I really only took it when I had the panic attack. But I do know people that have real Xanax addictions, a lot of these people, they're in comedy. And if you know somebody that's doing, keep an eye on them, because it's not a pretty thing. Anyway, so moving along, of course, I have anxiety. And I'm letting it, be like the weather, come and go. Okay, so I'm like, well, what should I do when I feel anxious? Oh, well, cook. Yeah, that's exactly what I want while I'm on my never-ending diet. So St. Patrick's Day is coming up, and I decide, you know what? I'm going to make an Irish soda bread. And I didn't want to make it in my bread machine, which I have and love. And I think I told you ages ago, my ex-mother-in-law, Christine, she had a bread machine, which is where I got turned on to the bread machine. And she used to make bread every few days in the bread machine in like her little shed, right? Like near her house. And the reason why she made it was, they live in Wales. It's not like they're getting, Costco chicken delivered at the door. You know what I'm saying? She literally did it because the supermarket was miles away. The only thing that was in the village in Wales of my ex-in-law's Welsh village, it was like a pub, a post office, and a beauty parlor. I mean, that was a barbershop. That was all that was in the little village. Everything else you got to get in your car. You got to drive super far away, right? So she would make bread. And she had this steel square contraption sitting on, a ledge. And she would turn out these beautiful Pullman loaf looking things, and they were great. It was like so nice every morning to have fresh bread. I was like, Ma, this lady makes fresh bread. And I was like, who has time for that? Anyway. Oh my God, growing up, my mother didn't make fresh bread. My mother threw a Nutri-Grain bar at me and was like, make sure you eat it all. Or when I was 3 years old, let me say this, when I was 3 years old, my mother, she trains me. Then, now you wonder why I have anxiety. Or now you wonder why she's so upset of what's going to come out in this book. When I was 3 years old, she used to make me a cheese sandwich the night before, put it on the bottom shelf of the refrigerator, and she taught me to wake up, when I woke up in the morning, go in the fridge, take out my cheese sandwich, turn on the television, Sesame Street, and sit down and eat it and watch it by myself. I mean, like, that's a little sad. Like, I get, like, 6 years old, 7 years old, but 3? I don't know if 3 should be dining alone. Just a thought. Then you wonder why she's so freaking paranoid, or I have anxiety. But no, but I whatever. She did raise me very independent. There's the silver lining. Okay, people? You got to look for the silver linings with your family. Otherwise, you'll constantly be at war. Okay. Oh, you could say, oh, my mother. She didn't make me breakfast. She gave me a Nutri-Grain bar. Other side of it, well, she was a multitasker. She fed her kids breakfast, and she got other stuff. So, anyway, moving on. Okay, so I have the bread machine. I didn't want to make the soda bread in the bread machine. I wanted to try to make it in the Dutch oven. I have a 5-quart cast iron Dutch oven. I used to have a Le Creuset. I don't know what happened to it. I feel like I brought it somewhere and I never got it back. Like every Tupperware I've ever had, This, so I bought another one. a few years ago. Cuisinart actually made one and on Amazon. It's just as good. It's like a quarter of the price. It's just as good. I don't even care. So I said, oh, Elyse, I'm surprised you don't have a Lake Crusade. Yeah, all right, whatever. I'll get one. I mean, it doesn't keep me up at night. Like, whatever I got. So, I made the bread. I love making bread in the Dutch oven, because it's like giving birth. Like, you put the raw dough in the oven, you cover it, and then when you take the top off, ting, it's like a baby. It grew. It's beautiful. It's so surprising. So anyway, this is the easiest recipe. Let me tell you how I did it. I preheated the oven to 425, right? And the point of that is, obviously, you're going to put your Dutch oven in before you add the bread in, because you want the Dutch oven to be really hot. So I preheat the oven to 425. While that's preheating, I took the Dutch oven, I greased it with butter, the bottom and the sides, because you don't want the bread to stick. And then I dusted it a little with flour, because, again, you don't want the dough to stick. When that was done, I put it in the oven uncovered for 30 minutes, okay? While that was heating up, I took a piece of parchment paper. I just, cut it off the roll, and I put it on the counter. And then in a mixing bowl, I took 4 cups of flour. You could use bread flour, but I didn't have that. I took a teaspoon of baking soda, put it in. Let me see, I have it written down. 1.5 teaspoons of salt, dumped it in the bowl. And then 1 3/4 cup of buttermilk, dumped it in. And mix it together, right? And when it's done, plop it onto the parchment paper and bake it in the uncovered oven for 30 minutes. And then after 30 minutes, take the cover off. Put it in the Dutch oven covered for 30 minutes, and then take the cover off and bake it for another 10-15 minutes so it gets golden brown. The bread was fabulous. Here's where I went wrong, though, I think, is I made that recipe. I also added in caraway seeds and some raisins and craisins. And the reason why is I like a raisin bread, and usually Irish soda bread has raisins in it, or currants or something. So, which I actually have currants, because it's in a lot of British recipes, but they're hard to find, so I didn't want to waste them. So I got out the bag of craisins, and I got my ShopRite bag of raisins, whatever. Put like a cup of craisins mix in, and then maybe a teaspoon of the caraway seeds. And then, for me, that's when I plop the bread on the parchment, right? Same recipe, just with the stuff, the add-ins. The bread is supposed to come out, like if you knock the bread, it's supposed to come out hollow. You're supposed to hear it hollowish on the inside, and the outside is supposed to be, crispy and gorgeous and whatever. My outside it was a beauty. But when I cut into it, it was very dense. So I'm wondering if the raisins and craisins and the caraway seeds made it dense, or if maybe just perhaps, I don't know. This is just a dense bread. I really don't know. But the baking soda is what makes Irish soda bread. It's still very good. Just because a bread is dense, who cares? All right, so it's not fluffy. Big effing deal. I heated it up. Put some butter on it. Oh my God. It's so good. But I do, and it lasts on the days. I put it in a Ziploc bag. It lasts, I don't know, it'll last 3 or 4 days. I have to, though, remake it without the raisins and craisins to see if that changes the density at all. But it's totally worth it. It's nice. And I'll do the corned beef and cabbage and all that kind of stuff, on St. Patrick's Day. But it's a fun thing to do. I think it's fun to make the bread, I'm always making bread when I'm on diets. I mean, what kind of crazy is that? That's a whole nother level of crazy. That's a whole nother level of torture, right? Okay, did you watch Chris Rock's Selective Outrage special on Netflix? I think it's worth a watch. You should check it out. A lot of mixed reviews in the comedy community. Some people were saying it was more like a TED Talk, not as much comedy. Other people were saying it's amazing. He sounds like Rock. He was talking about some really important issues in the form of stand-up. I think it was a mix of the both. I really liked it. hour long. He's 58 years old. He's dressed in all white. Doc Martens, looks great. Set great. It was, in Baltimore. He taped it in Baltimore. Big theater. I thought, it was very, so we talked about, some racial issues, wokish sort of stuff. He talked about, I think he talked about transgender stuff. He had some really funny bits about the Kardashians. I mean, you got to watch how Kris Jenner, she's like, like an old school grandma. She lets everybody come in, oh, you're a bipolar rapper, come into my family. Oh, you're a crackhead basketball player, come into my family, grab a plate. Like he really does a very funny job when he's writing these. Like, that's a really great bit, right? Or he talks about how Beyonce is so gorgeous, and if she worked in Burger King, like, Jay-Z would still marry her because that's how fabulous she is, right? But he's like, but if Jay worked in Burger King, like, it's funny. There's some really funny parts. He does talk about important issues that are important to us, society as a whole, important to him. Fine. At the end of the special, which I think is the biggest worthwhile part to watch, is if you saw the Oscar slap. He addresses it in his closing bit, and basically he's saying, like, he made a little joke at Jada a few years ago, and then at the Oscars he mentioned her like one little piece, whatever, and then Will Smith obviously got up, slapped him, whatever, and he was saying Jada had, this is what he says, I couldn't even believe this, he said Jada had an affair with her son's best friend, and Will Smith, and they have this weird ass marriage. This is what Rock's saying. This is my opinion. They have this weird ass marriage, and Will Smith just has taken the marital issues and exploded. And he's like, Jada, I made a joke about you a few years ago. You started this, and now he says I'm finishing it. He goes on this whole rant, rah rah rah, and then he drops the mic and he leaves the stage, and that's how it closes. It was angry, his sort of, I felt like his delivery was angry. It was sort of passionate, it was fiery. He used a lot of F-bombs. Also throughout the special, he used a lot of F-bombs. It was raw. It definitely wasn't as polished as some of his other bits, like the Beyonce, Jay-Z, Burger King, or the Christian. It was much more like, okay, here I entertained you for 50 minutes, and now I'm going to take 10 minutes, and I'm going to just talk to you. And he throws in a little sprinkle of this, that I thought it was great. And I heard, I don't know where I read it. I must have read it. But Netflix, first of all, they paid him a ton of money, tens upon tens of millions of dollars to do this. I don't know if how much they paid him is publicized, so I'm not going to say the amount, but it was like so much money. It's insane. It's like you could retire for generations on this money. And they promoted it. They promoted it like a fight, like how they would promote a fight, like as opposed to like a fight, like a boxing fight, as opposed to like a comedy special. And nothing draws a crowd like a fight, like a little drama, And so Netflix was smart, I think, in the sense of how they promoted this, because it drummed up all this conversation. Everybody's talking about it. And I thought it was good. You got to watch it. You got to tell me what you think. Yeah. One of the things I like that he said, by the by, which, look, this is how good I think it is. I think it was so good that we're talking about it. We're not laughing about it, though. I did laugh, but, let me say this. One of my friends, who's a very accomplished female stand-up, said to me, Elyse, she's like, the reason why I didn't like it, she said, is because when I watch comedy, I want to sit and I want to laugh. That's it. I just want to be entertained. I agree with that. When you're going and you're paying money to a comedy club, you don't want to hear a TED Talk, right? Maybe you just want to like kick your feet up and have a cocktail and laugh, right? But if you're going to see somebody specific, right, if you're going to watch somebody specific, you probably know a little bit about their background or what they're going to talk about. You know what I'm saying? Like if you come to see me, right? I mean, I'm not comparing myself to Rock, but if you come to see me at all, but if you come to see me, you are going to laugh, right? You're going to laugh, but you'll also hear stories or whatever, probably about my mother, right? About working in the corporate world, right? I mean, about, having British kids. You're not going to just come and hear stories, jokes about, cannolis and mozzarella. I'm a different Brit. You kind of know what you're getting into, right? So I have to disagree with my friend who's, the successful stand-up, because I think that everybody knew that he was going to probably talk more broadly about social justice, maybe some racial issues, maybe, like fighting, because of the events. And he would be stupid not to. He would let his fans down. And let me tell you, he got huge applause. And at the end of that special, he had his hands up in the air and he's vulnerable and it looked like he had tears in his eyes. I liked it. And the one part that I liked the best was something he said. He said, we live in this culture right now that's so victim driven. Everybody's like, I'm a victim, like, poor me, And he said he could have easily went and sat down with Oprah or Gail and talked to them about, how he was slapped and he's so upset and Hollywood this and they let that happen. And then Will got to sit and watch the rest of the show. He didn't get the boot, blah, blah. Even, of course, though, he is banned from the Oscars for the next 10 years. But they didn't remove him in the moment, And Rock was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not a victim. He's like, I was an innocent bystander in their marital, scuffle. And it is what it is. He's like, it is what it is. He's like, and the only thing I'm doing was I wanted to save my point of view and my story until now, that you can hear it on my stage. I don't know if he said this, but it's like he wants to save it till now. You could hear it on his stage, on his comedy special. He's not going to give Oprah or Gail, those kind of ratings. He doesn't want to sit down and tell the story with them. He doesn't want to play the victim. And I thought that's so nice, because everything in life, everything happens to everybody in life, right? But so many people like, poor me, even kind of even what I said before when I was talking about my upbringing, and I'm like, oh, my mother, she did X, Y, and Z. That happens, but I don't walk around and say like, I'm so sad. It's like, all right, it happened. Move on. Get over it. Like, come on. Anyway. Okay. Another book, because I feel like I mentioned a few books in this episode. Shirley MacLaine's daughter, Sachi Parker, is an acquaintance of mine. We've done some play readings together, some screenplay readings together. One of them specifically was, I can't remember the name, but it was an Italian play that was translated into English, and it's on archive at the Queen's College in the Italian archive section, Italian libraries. And we were in the studio with a bunch of actors, and Sachi was there doing a role, and she is a fabulous actress. I mean, she kind of looks like her mother. She has long hair, Sachi, and I think she's about 65. But she has like the Shirley MacLaine mouth. If genetics definitely, talent is definitely genetic, and it's passed down, because her acting was spectacular. Anyway, so she wrote a book called Lucky Me, and I bought it. It's definitely worth reading. It's so interesting. If you like Shirley MacLaine, if you like Hollywood stories, this is a good book. Sachi, in her words, because I think Shirley had a lot to say about the book, a lot of negative things to say, but Sachi wrote a biography about her life growing up with her big star mother and her big director father, and how her mother sent her to Japan at a very young age to go live with her father. And Sachi was raised in Japan. She didn't live with the mother. And she talks about how her mother was a crazy narcissist and, all this kind of stuff. And whether it's true or not, who knows? Nobody really knows the truth. But it's so interesting, all of her stories. And you really fall in love with Sachi as a person. You're like, oh my God, like, you're so great. And it's so weird how I found this book, because I bought the book just because the subject interested me. And then I met her, like, at a play read. I didn't even know she was going to be there. So it was like this weird serendipitous thing, right? But anyway, in her book, she talks about liking Eiderdown comforters. Do you know what Eiderdown comforters are? Yeah, I didn't know either, okay? So she's like, in her book, oh, my big luxury in life is Eiderdown comforters. I just love them. They keep me warm in the winter and cool in the summer, and they last my whole lifetime, and it's my big luxury. So I'm like, a comforter. Okay. So, of course, I'm like, I want to get an Eiderdown comforter. I Google it. Eiderdown comforters and pillows start at $6,000. They go up to like $25,000. I know, $25,000. They last for 50 years. The royals use them. Apparently, eider is a duck from Hungary, and their feathers are soft and billowy and plushy and unlike anything in the world. And the feathers come off in the nest, and then I can't even believe I'm saying this, they're hand harvested out of the nest, and and that's how they get the eider down, right? And they stuff the comforters and the pillows. So they're in short supply, is basically what I'm saying. And so that's the reason for the price. So, of course, after I read this book, I'm like, I want to try an Eiderdown comforter. Maybe I could turn the internet upside down and find one for cheap. So I didn't. Newsflash, I didn't. But what I did find was I found a place in Budapest that makes handmade down pillows and down comforters for a bargain price, and people swear by them. This place is called Elfenbein Comforters. The website is some shady-ass website, but if you Google Elfenbein Comforters, it'll come up, or Elfenbein TripAdvisor. And I ordered 4 pillows from them at like 4 a.m. It was an insane purchase. Well, insane, not like cost. Insane because, like, why am I importing pillows from Budapest to Manhattan at 4 in the morning? Anyway. The pillows were maybe like $40 each. I got 2 Euro shams, which is, the 26 by 26 pillows. And the reason why I got those, I don't usually do Euro shams, but I have them because when I was in Italy, one of the hotels I stayed at had them, and they were so sumptuous. I remember sitting up in bed with the long, king pillow, and then the square Euro sham, and it was a really plushy down in front of the pillow, and I was able to sit up straight and like read my book, and it was so comfortable. Like it was so comfortable. Maybe it was also the beautiful Italian decor and environment. Fine. Maybe the fact that there was champagne in my room. Fine. But I bought the down and then 2 king pillows. And then they came, and they didn't come in a box. They came in like a plastic bag kind of thing, like a 99-cent vinyl plaid bag, with like a zipper. And it was wrapped in plastic, and more. It was so. I actually didn't open it until this past week because I was scared that maybe the pillows were going to stink. I don't know. I was like, what is this when it arrived? What is this? Who sent me this? And then I was like, oh my God, it's my 4 a.m. purchase. That's what happens, right? That has to happen to you. I was in the coffee shop recently, and 2 mothers were comparing their Amazon list, and one mother's like, oh, ignore all this stuff down here. This is all the stuff I bought at 3 a.m. All the stuff on the top, that's the regular stuff. That's what I do. That's why I have shit that comes through the door. I don't even remember what I bought. I do not remember what I ordered last night. And I'm not saying, I'm talking about like an eyeliner sharpener. Like I'll be like, oh, I need a metal eyeliner sharpener, or oh, I need a metal comb. Can't find that anywhere. Let me order it. It's so ridiculous, And then I get a box. I get a box from Amazon with 1 singular metal comb, like 3 days later, and I'm like, what? Oh God, is somebody trying to send me a message? And then I'm like, oh, I did that. I have to check the time to see if I ordered it or not. Anyway, so the pillows came. They are fabulous. They are amazing. I mean, I took a picture of them, I think, in my story. Like, I was like, oops, made one of these purchases again. Great. Elfenbein comforters. I love you. They and if you look at the pictures on TripAdvisor, they look like they're based in a cave in Hungary. Literally. But they're not Eiderdown. Sachi, I did not find your fancy Eiderdown, but I did find what I think is a great alternative. The best thing when you order from these people is they say, do you like the pillow stuffed, or like medium stuffed, or lightly stuffed? And they sent them like within 3 days of ordering. Like, I don't know, it's like they drove the jet themselves. They flew the jet themselves. from Budapest to New York. My product of the week is another book, and it's from Paulie the Tooth. I'm going to hold it up if you're watching. It's a book called, it's a yellow paperback book, thick book, 300 pages, called The School of Life, An Emotional Education by Alain de Botton. And it's such a good book. You got to get this book, honestly. It's, let me tell you why. So a few years ago, I was in Florida. We took the girls for their, we took Annie for her birthday, right? And I can't remember where were we? We were shelling. Anyway, I was divorced, but Paul flew down, stayed at a hotel down there. We took Annie, on a great boat shelling cruise for her birthday, and obviously my other daughter Vivi was there. My family was there. It was really nice. And when I saw Paul in the hotel, he was sitting at the bar, of course, because he's British, and he was reading this book. And I said to him, "Well, what book is that?" And he said, "Oh, this book, Elyse, is changing my life." I said, it's called The School of Life, An Emotional Education. I said, "You couldn't read that book when we were married? We got divorced and now you're educating yourself emotionally? Great. Thanks, Paulie the Tooth." Excuse me. That's how upset he makes me. My throat gets clogged. So he was like, I said, "What is it about?" The book is about relationships and money and your childhood and your future and mindfulness. Again, it just fits sort of in the theme of this episode, right? But it explains why we do the things we do, and it has so many chapters. It's a self-help book, but not really. It just kind of gives you short paragraphs that are scientific, because he has tons of references. There's big references in the book. There's glossary. Talking about, I'm looking, sex, good listener, worrying about whether people like us or not, charm, shyness, vulnerability, how do we deal with enemies, motives, therapy. I mean, it's just so much how we grow and develop as people. It's really so interesting. It's basically everything school should teach us, but don't. How amazing would it be if we had a class like this when we were little kids in school, right? To understand maybe psychology or our emotions. It's fantastic. So when I was going through my anxiety stuff a month ago, I said to Paul, "What's that book that changed your life?" And he was like, "Don't worry, I'll just send it to you." And he Amazoned it to me. So nice of him. And I've been reading it every night, and it's little bits before I go to bed. You gotta get it. It's just really good. It takes a little bit to read. It's a slow read. There's it's the guy who wrote it is French, so I don't know if it was translated or he just has a really fantastic vocabulary. But some of it I'm like, what does that word mean? I gotta look it up. So it takes a little bit, but once you kind of get the gist of it, and you're in the right mindset to read it, it's so good. School of Life, Alain de Botton, and Emotional Education. That's the product of the day. Okay, quote. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, "Nothing can bring you peace but yourself. Not your spouse, not the things you buy, not even your kids, not your job. Nothing can bring you peace but yourself." So, very fitting. Anyway, that's that. I love to love you, baby. So excited to talk to you. See you next week. I'm Elyse DeLucci.